Wendy's here. Excellent. All right. I gotta, oh, okay, it just turned 6:30. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Transportation Board of the Town of Brookline to order. It is 6:30 p.m. on the 15th of April, 2026. Thank you all for joining. Dylan or someone, do you mind calling the roll to establish a quorum, please?
Sure. Jonathan is absent, looks like.
He'll be here.
Wendy,
Here.
Nancy,
Here.
Len is absent. He may join later. Richard
Yeah.
and Brian.
Here. Okay, we have four. Just for everyone's edification, the Jonathan is joining right now, as is Len. So why don't we let them in, and then when they're here, they can say hello. Jonathan Capoust, sir, do you mind saying hello so we can establish that you're here?
Hello.
Hello. Len, can you say hello so we can establish you're here?
Hello.
Thank you very much. So we have 6 members, and we are called to order, and we will begin, as we always do, with public comments for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda, please use the raise hand function, and I'll call on you as best I can. Please note that for more or less every item, we will have a public comment period on that particular item. So please use the raise hand function if you wish to speak on items that are not on the agenda. I'll give it a minute because I see Emily Jacobson joining, and I'll bet she's going to want to have a public comment. So we are in the public comment period for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda, please use the raise hand function, and I would be delighted to hear what you fine folks have to say. We also accept public comments by writing, email. I suppose we'll take mail. Why not? So if anybody would like to make a comment on an item not on the agenda, please use the raise hand function. All right, I'm not seeing any hands leaping. I'll leave that open for a quick second while we move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of 4 items, and an affirmative vote by the Transportation Board will adopt all 4 items. The first item is the approval of the March 18th, 2026 minutes. 3B is a request by 30 Gibbs Street for an exemption to the resident permit parking rules, allowing for a resident daytime parking permit to be issued for Naples Road. 3C request and designate 7 non-EV and 1 EV parking spaces as resident overnight parking permits only, 6 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. in the Town Hall parking lot. And 3D is a request to install a crosswalk crossing Pleasant Street at St. John Street, removing 2 metered spaces. Would any member of the Transportation Board like to have an item removed and discussed separately? Richard Murphy, go ahead, please.
Just a couple of quick questions around Gibbs Street with the permit parking. I know Gibbs Street is plenty of parking, so is it due to the lack of space that it goes around to Naples? And just curious on that.
Anybody know the answer to that question? Usually it's because they're on a corner.
Yeah.
And it's something else, but
Yeah. So it leads me to my bigger question is how many parking permits do we issue in the course of a year?
no,
Just kind of curious what that landscape looks like.
that's a good question.
You know, and if we don't have it tonight, if maybe throw it on the next agenda.
So
Just kind of curious.
We tend to do all of those at the start of the fiscal year, usually in July.
Okay.
So if it's all right, I'll ask you we can hold off on that, and let's give the staff a bigger time to do a bigger presentation on parking permits in general in July. If that's all right with you?
That sounds just ducky.
I can
Yeah,
answer specifically about Gibbs Street if you do
Yeah, go ahead,
want some
Dylan.
context. the apartment is located right on the corner of Gibbs and Naples, and there's more parking on Naples than, and they realized they should have submitted the application on Naples instead of Gibbs, even though the address is Gibbs Street. So they're requesting a exemption.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Murphy?
Nope, I'm good.
So Dylan, can we remove, just let the record show, I'd like to remove the minutes from the last meeting just because I wasn't here. So we're to take a vote on the minutes and then we'll do the rest of the consent agenda as is. But first, is there anyone who would like to make a comment on any of the items on the consent agenda at this time? Please use your raise hand function and we would be delighted to hear from you. Not seeing any hands, and I'm going to do last call for public comment for items not on the agenda. Last call for public comments for items not on the agenda. Hey, Scott Englander, let's hear from you, good sir. Hello, Scott.
Oh, there we go. Let's
Scott,
see.
hey, there you are. How are you, Scott?
All right, how are you doing?
Living that proverbial dream, thank you.
All right, let me take my hand down here. Sure. All right. I'm Scott Englander, a Precinct 6 Town Meeting member of the Vision Zero Committee, chair of the committee that developed Brookline's Complete Streets policy and served on the Transportation Board for about 5 years. I get around by foot, by bike, public transit, car. My wife and I ride on Harvard Street and shop along its length several times a week. Nevertheless, I don't feel safe and have had some close calls with cars there. The crash history validates these concerns. My mother-in-law would ride there if it were safer, as would many families I know with young children. But I must say, I'm baffled that the safety and mobility of families like ours can be seen as so expendable. Harvard Street is a major bike route with disproportionately high crash history, part of the Vision Zero priority network, the Complete Streets priority projects list, and the Green Routes Bicycle Network plan. The upcoming pavement project is a chance for us to improve bicycle safety on this critical route without significantly increasing the cost. A mill and overlay project on such a street without including low-cost improvements to bike safety, think paint and flex posts, and without consideration by the Transportation Board is not only against current policy, it's unconscionable. I'm talking about the kinds of simple improvements that were made on Washington Street in recent years when that street underwent similar treatment, closing gaps in bike lanes, parking protected bike lanes, where double parked cars obstruct lanes. So what motivation for not including such improvements on Harvard could possibly be worth the life-altering or fatal crashes that they might help avoid? And I'll further ask, why bother developing Complete Streets policies or Vision Zero plans at all if we're unwilling to follow them in one of the clearest opportunities in recent years to put them into practice? And if the Transportation Board is abdicating its role related to bike safety improvements for this project, how can we explain that? I urge the Transportation Board to commit to finding a way to including low-cost, meaningful bicycle safety improvements on Harvard Street as part of the upcoming pavement project. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, last call for public comments, items not on the agenda. All right, we're going to close the public comment period. Thanks, everybody. And we're back to the consent agenda. Len, how are you, good sir? What do you got to say for us?
Can we respond to Scott's comment?
No, we do not respond to public comments, Leonard. You know our policy.
I don't know if that's always true.
It's always true most of the time, Len.
All
No,
right.
go ahead. What do you want to say?
I completely agree with what Scott just said.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. So now we're back on the consent agenda. I asked to remove 3A, which are the minutes of the March 18th meeting. Does someone have a motion and a second with respect to to item 3A, the minutes of March 18th?
So move.
Moved by
Second.
Nancy, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. Dylan, you want to call the roll, please?
Jonathan,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
and Richard,
Yes.
and Brian.
Abstain, please. Thank you. We'll now move on to items 3B, C, D. I think that's it. Yeah. So that's the Gibb Street one, the 7 non-EV and 1 EV resident overnight permits at Town Hall Lot, and a crosswalk at Crossing Pleasant at John Street. Is there a motion to approve these items?
So move.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Dylan, you're getting good at this.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes, great. Thank you. And we are going to move on. Member updates. Anybody have a member update they'd like to share? Richard Murphy.
Yeah, so obviously Hayes Safety Improvement is with engineering, so waiting to see when they do have time to review that. We've been asked with collaboration with Wendy, we are just starting up working on Driscoll School safety improvements there and everything. So we have that coming in on top of Hayes. So when we can move on Hayes, obviously just trying to space them apart. But that's kind of like the latest greatest.
Thank you, Richard. Any other member updates? Okay, DPW update, Mr. Oh, sorry, Wendy, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I don't know if this counts as an update, but I'm gonna throw it in there. And also to kind of ask how to manage it. But as a transportation board member and town meeting member, I've gotten a lot of emails and contacts about this Harvard Street, issue. And, as have my fellow town meeting members and probably other precincts as well. So I feel like that counts as an update to say that I'm hearing about an issue that has come to this board and is still kind of lingering in the board. So I guess that's my update. And my question is, I do think that, like Len, I agree with Scott and I acknowledge that. And I would like at some moment today to have the opportunity to discuss this topic further. And I don't know when
Sure, let's
when
talk
I
about it
can
now.
introduce that.
Talk about it now. Is that
Okay,
all right? Cool.
sure.
You still have the floor, Wendy.
So I was just looking back, trying to see from the minutes how we left this situation, and I my memory from last week, and I think it's in the minutes, although it's not as thorough, is that that the transportation division was going to take some of our concerns and our suggestions into consideration, and I believe come back to us. And there was a discussion about timing and that paint, that road work is done before paint goes down. And so there's time to sort of reconsider and talk about things. So I'd like to first get a better sense of how and when that's going to happen and to the extent that it's going to happen and whether that is going to happen. And whether any changes have already been made since our last meeting that we're not aware of. So I guess that's my first sort of set of questions.
Okay, well, I'll start. So the select board took this matter up last night. The contract that they approved included many of the things that were discussed last week. Several of the items were included sort of as a change order at the last minute. So though a lot of them got in there, I don't know exactly what did and what didn't. But the select board had significant public comment on this item last night and ultimately voted 501 to approve the contract for the repaving of Harvard Street as is. I know you and I corresponded on this, and I'll just give you my opinion. I think there's been a lot of misinformation and wrong information about this project in the public. The DPW commissioner absolutely has the authority to repave our roads. This is exactly what the select board asked us to do, asked the transportation division to do, and asked the select board to do. If you remember, we redid our complete streets approach because we found that we couldn't get stuff done. And the complete streets, whenever we touched anything, led to lots and 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 lots of process. And we weren't just getting to maintain our roads. So I think we all agreed, and I don't remember exactly, but I know I agreed that we definitely needed to do more to maintain the existing rights of way. And that's what the commissioner exercised her purview to do in this case. And my understanding in the conversation that I had with her is that as long as it was more or less the same, it didn't come to us for design because it wasn't a redesign. It was a sort of repaving. There is lots that needs to be done on Harvard Street. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The design review committee process, the cost and the effort that would be required to do Harvard Street the way we want to do it is such a heavy lift. It would take, I mean, it took 2 years to do Washington Street. Harvard Street would take 3. There is not enough money in multiple CIPs to do everything that we want to do. We have not yet heard from the business community. We have not yet heard from people that park cars. We have not yet heard from lots and lots of other stakeholders about what they want. The process to do that would take so long and be incredibly expensive that we basically wouldn't be able to do anything else for the next few years, in my humble opinion. And that's not what we do. So we have to find ways to kind of do repaving while also moving to do other projects. The other thing I'll say, Wendy, and publicly is that what's happening here is that this is falling sort of in between and this is also what happened with Chestnut Hill Ave. We're trying to move towards a reprioritization of all of our roadway segments in town based on lots of inputs. This one sort of fell in between the sort of old way we do things and the new way we're doing things. And unfortunately, it just sort of, that's the way it happened. And I think it also speaks to the need for us to do that reprioritization. And we will talk about that later in this meeting. I don't know why certain projects rise to the top and come to us right now. It doesn't seem as if there's much rationale, frankly. I've looked at all of our policies. I've looked at the 31 neighborhood traffic calming requests. I've looked at lots of plans from our advisory committees. Everyone has competing desires and wants and needs. We can't do everything. We especially can't do everything perfectly. And we in Brookline, and I say this with love to let the perfect get in the way of the good. What's happening on Harvard Street is not perfect, not even close, but it's pretty damn good. And it'll be better than it is currently. And sometimes good has to be good enough. I wish we could do every single safety improvement on every single road all at once right now. I wish I had that money. I wish I had that time. That doesn't exist. We have an override that we're also trying to get passed, which if it passes will be by the skin of its teeth. We don't have the money to do everything we want to do, let alone the time. So we have to kind of make decisions and do things sometimes that aren't popular or aren't popular with a particular segment of the population. So yes, I understand the town meeting members are getting lots of emails on that lovely listserv that I love so much. I get it. Not everybody's happy. Not everybody's going to be happy with every decision we make or don't make. This happened to be one of those situations that was purely in the DPW commissioner's purview. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus. It's a repaving project. We're going to have to do repaving projects as we do redesign projects going forward, because there's a huge need out there. I think it's what, $100 million backlog or something, Dan Murphy, that we have on repaving projects, and the CIP is about $5 million a year. So, you know, we're going to have to make choices, and we can't do everything that everybody would like us to do every single time. And so, yeah, Wendy, I guess I'm not happy with how Harvard Street turned out either, but I'm willing to accept that it's sometimes you have to just take the win or take the good enough results. And yes, it will not be as safe as it possibly could be. Not much is in the world. And I'm okay with that.
So Do you mind if I?
Oh, please, please,
Okay.
please, go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
I would just like to push back on a few things that you've
Fair.
said.
Fair.
So first of all, I don't think it's a dichotomy between making changes within the budget that we have right now or making many, many $1 million changes in a Washington, complete street situation. I think that what was asked of us and what people have been talking about was rethinking paint. And so I think it's a false dichotomy to say these are our two options and that's it. I think what Scott brought up, and is what I've been thinking about since our last meeting and in reviewing our documents also, is that we do have these guidelines. And even if this falls under, the traffic division or engineering's purview, they are making changes, they are making decisions, and those decisions per our documents should be guided by our documents. So we have this Vision Zero policy now, this plan, and it has in there guidelines around taking advantage of moments of repaving, acknowledging that those are repaving projects, they have their own budget, but that we should not let those go to waste and we should make improvements. And it outlines what those improvements should be, particularly in high conflict areas, major tier 1 roads, which Harvard Street falls into. And those have to do with pedestrian safety improvements, bicycle improvements, car improvements, everything. So yes, some of those have been made in this. Decisions have been made. What I see when I read through those documents is that the decisions that those guidelines have not, I would say, been applied as well as they could be. When you say we have to do, with what's good enough, my pushback is that I don't think this is good enough. I don't think it has to come back to the board, but I think that there should be a give and take here, and there should be a response to the feedback that we get from other people and that we're giving. And that doesn't mean that we open it to a 6-month-long or a year-long public process. It doesn't have to be a public process. But I think that the problem that we're running up against and the potential negative consequence of this is that all of the work that we did saying, yes, Complete Streets has been bogging us down, we need to come up with processes to make this, go more quickly, that there's going to be a backlash. And we're going to then be faced with being pushed to say, actually, now things are going too fast. We want that process back. So I agree, we need to do things quickly, but I don't think that means that we should then have no say in anything and trust that however, the transportation division or engineering, and you guys are great, I don't mean this to throw you under the bus, that the decisions are just made solely by them if they're not going to be in line with the guidelines that we have in place. And I don't think that the changes are fully in line with the guidelines that are in place. So, yeah.
That's fair. Nancy, go ahead, please.
I just want to say, I think that this has gone well beyond a member update. And this is an effort to place for discussion an item that is not on the agenda, that has not been noticed to the public. To the extent that these comments are appropriate with respect to our discussion on the proposed CIP prioritization, I think we can discuss it then. But I object to any further discussion of this matter at this time. I'd like to get on with the agenda.
Why Nancy's our wonderful lawyer. See that? See, that was good.
I
Thank
also
you.
don't want to go late tonight. We had an extraordinarily long meeting, and I'd like to finish in time tonight.
God willing. All right, Richard, can you wait until either CIP discussion or new business, or can you make a quick comment? Are you ready? You lowered your hand.
Quick comment, 5 seconds. I just want to thank Wendy she made excellent points, and I think transparency is always a good way for us all to work. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, Dan Murphy, DPW update. Go ahead, good sir.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Dan Murphy, Engineering Transportation Director. You should have seen my director's report this afternoon. I wanted to wait till I had a meeting today on Hammond Street, and I wanted to include that in the report. And so I'm just going to bring up a couple items. The Hammond Road diet and traffic signal finally is coming, and we're getting ready to bid. They're going through final design now. I think I've mentioned last time. We took the 2 projects and we bid them as one. The big change was that we had bonded wearing course initially. But we had a lot of utility work we had to do ahead. And over that time period, the pavement basically degraded, and we decided the mill and overlay was the right approach. So with that, we're looking at replacing some old berm that they've not been done for years. And in some places we're going to put in some curbing. And so that the two projects are together as one, and it looks like we're going to have that bid out to bid later it'll be in May. But looking forward to finally getting that project done. Again, that's Hammond Street Road Diet as approved in the signal together. And so that's one item I wanted to bring up. And the second one was just I had an item a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month now, on Green Spot, and I just wanted to update that the charging locations, stations at Kent and Webster, there were 5 of them, and Fuller, there were 7 that were going to be closed, but they're actually they're going to remain available for charging. The decision was made to hold off and keep those available for charging. Green Spot will continue to monitor usage and make adjustments over time. And I get that from the sustainability folks gave me an update on that. And I just wanted to share that. And those are just the 2 I'll bring up. If you have any questions,
Thanks.
I can take them.
Yeah, Dan, I had a quick question on that. So I believe we voted in February or March to change those green spot parking regulations. Am I
Okay.
imagining this? Do we need to redo that now?
I'm not certain of that.
I don't believe there ever was a vote taken in February.
It was just an update? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Questions for Mr. Murphy? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. We're gonna move
You
on
meant
to our
to-
next.
Hold on.
Oh,
I couldn't
Jonathan.
get to my button fast enough. Sorry. Dan, just two questions. One, can you just give an update on the Davis Street footbridge?
Oh, it's I think it's taking a little time to get through right away. And I know that we're finally at the place where we've gotten agreement on it and the final plans already. And that will we'll go to the Mass DOT person who I guess really understands and will be a key person to get buy-in on it. And I think that's moving forward and should keep us going and then move towards 25%. Yeah.
Okay. And then when is our next update on Gateway East?
I haven't got a date yet. Maybe Dan's here, but maybe Rob. I don't know when. I know they're planning to come back and present the alternatives or the options that they've come up with. So that'll be on the next agenda fairly soon. But I don't have a date right now.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Brian.
No. The Davis Path footbridge, just so you're aware, it's still on the MPO's transportation improvement plan. So there's still potential there for it to be funded that way. So, and Washington Street 39 million was included for FY30. So our folks do a very good job of wrangling money out of the state, and we're very appreciative of that. Anything else, Jonathan? Okay. We will then move on to our next agenda item, which I believe is agenda item 5A. Discussion and action on the request for a pickup and drop-off only zone at 90 to 100 Bellingham Road. This is down by your way, Richard. Who's got this one?
Brian, this is my item.
Yay. Hi, Dan. Go ahead.
It's to establish a 100-foot pickup drop-off zone on Bellingham Road, directly adjacent to 90 100 Bellingham, and that's tied to the new Chabad Center. And this new facility will host classes, community events, and it's expected to generate periodic drop-off activity. So this request for the pickup drop-off zone came through coordination between the town, the applicant, and the neighborhood to proactively manage this pickup and drop-off. There's a legal component. There's a land court agreement for judgment, and if the Transportation Board does approve the curb cut, the property owner is obliged to provide a pull-in for the pickup and drop-off. And this will help with traffic operations. And if there's any questions, I can take them. And we also have Jonathan Simpson, Town Council, on the line. And just so everyone can see the area, let me share what it will look like.
I'm gonna
99
talk to the commissioner about getting Hebrew lessons for all the DPW staff, because their pronunciation was terrible, Dan.
Sorry, I don't know. 99 Bellingham Road. It's right on the corner with Grove Street. So the pickup and drop off would be this space right here next to the center.
Pick up and drop off, of course, being the name of the chauffeur of the Tappan brothers. Oh. Okay, anybody have any questions on this one? Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, just curious, are we also doing any curb cut on Grove Street? For any reason on those designs? Currently, there's not.
The pickup and drop off for the center is on Bellingham Road.
Right, okay. This might tie into the South Brookline roadway diet, where parking availability is right now not available on Grove Street. There's something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Nancy?
I'm just curious, is this a 24/7 pickup and drop off, or is it limited in any way by date and time?
Fun will be 24/7.
And in your estimation, that's what they need?
I don't know if they would need it all day, but I don't think there's a large demand for parking on the street normally. So I don't think there's a need for the space to reopen after hours. If the request comes in, we could always revisit that and change the sign if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I used to always enjoy when Todd Corain had to say Maimonides, so that's my guy. And bringing up the joy of pronouncing Hebrew words from the transportation staff. All right, is there a motion and a second to approve item 5A?
So move.
Second.
Second. All right, Dan, you want to call the roll, please?
Sure. Nancy,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Len.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. We'll move on now to 5B, which is placemaking as part of the Washington Street design, presentation and discussion of the placemaking study for the Washington Street Complete Streets project. Is this, let's see, I just had it here. This is, whom is this? Is this Chris? Ty and Bond? Oh, yay.
It is time bond, but if I could just kick it off. Obviously, this board is very, very familiar with Washington Street. We're excited to be working with the Time Bond team. 25% design plans were submitted a couple of months ago, and we've been working through the comments with Mass DOT. There will soon be a comment resolution meeting with Mass DOT, which will be followed by utility site walks and eventually a design public hearing, hopefully in the next 2 months. But as part of the 25% submission that went through the select board and this board, we committed to performing the parking studies in both Brookline Village and Washington Square, as well as examining wayfinding as part of improving the overall mobility and navigation of the corridor. So we've been working very closely with Chris and Alan. This has been a huge interdepartmental effort from the town involving the highway division, the parks and sustainability division to evaluate snow removal, planting opportunities, as well as finding ways to beautify some of these larger sections of the corridor. So I'm really excited tonight to hand this over to Chris and Alan, who will be talking about some of the placemaking and wayfinding that we've been working on.
Take it away, gentlemen. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all. So Alan is here with me, and then we have two of our landscape architects from the Halverson Group, which is our internal landscape architecture studio, to help us sort of guide us through some of the renderings and perspectives prepared at the sort of critical locations along Washington Street. Just as a sort of some context, the representations that you'll see tonight are a collaborative effort between our staff, Town of Brookline, DPW input, and then just an overall vision of the corridor based on the available space. So we are still at 25% design. So what you see here tonight is not set in stone, but it's something that we have come up with the use and context, the surrounding infrastructure, surrounding businesses. And it's our way of conveying what is a potential, and it's a good canvas to gather input on, right? Because that's really what we are, where we are in the process. Is this is what we have, but happy to hear some feedback, some suggestions, and really use this as an opportunity to have that open discussion with you all here tonight. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. So we have it broken up into 2 phases, Brian. So we have 2 items on the agenda. I think we're 5B and 5C, I believe. So I
That's right,
split it up
Chris.
accordingly.
Yep, feel free.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen.
Is Chris a co-host with able to share his screen?
Yes.
All right.
I swear, after 5 years of Zoom and or virtual meetings, I will become better at this. All right. So can you see my full screen here, or do you see the? Okay, perfect. All right, great. So thank you, everybody. So first agenda item here today is streetscape and placemaking along Washington Street. So with me is Bob Ulig and Gary Hahn, who are our landscape architects. We're going to go through our streetscape perspective for the critical areas. So we call it critical areas along Washington Street. So these are based on our layout presented during our 25% design process. And the perspectives are focused on 3 distinct areas, right? This is not encompassing of the entire corridor. We're highlighting 3 areas. Those 3 areas are Washington Street at School Street and Cypress Street, Washington Street at Harvard Street, which is Brookline Village, and then Washington Street at Weybridge Road, which we're using as a case study for some of the larger side street intersections that we are gaining space on from reclaiming asphalt. So this is just a good template for those types of intersections. So Washington and Weybridge. Each of these provides a visual representation of what we have shown in previous iterations in a 2-dimensional standpoint. And we've used these perspectives to establish an initial budget for streetscaping component of this project, because we've gone through the process of doing the layout, but we also have to figure out what the costs are associated with that. So to put that into context, we have the 3 locations here just on a project location plan: Weybridge Road, School and Cypress, and Brookline Village. At this point, I am going to turn it over to Gary and or Bob to kind of walk us through some of these perspectives and give us an understanding of what we're looking at, what our process is to make these decisions, and sort of understand how we've come to some of these conclusions. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Hahn. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Just didn't want to babble on and be on mute. Let's just stay on this page for a quick second. So a lot of very good work going into Washington Street. I think in this particular location, the existing condition is there's a island in the middle with some declining trees, and what the transportation team has designed here is some reconfiguration of the roadway. What that has allowed us is really the opportunity to consolidate some of this disfragmented open space and really consolidate it into one larger space that can be used for pedestrians. So what we are proposing here is basically a plaza that works for the public, but I think in some ways also acts as a open space, as an extension for the adjacent commercial spaces in terms of creating a space that people can gather and use and feel not just a public space, but also I think a space that would benefit the commercial businesses adjacent to the space. Do you want to move to just kind of flip through some of the renderings. So one of our design criteria was, well, I guess we have several design criteria that we're trying to do. One of which was preservation of existing trees, especially at back of sidewalk. Another was creating a bit of buffer space using vegetation just to separate both the roadway and the cycle track from a pedestrian space. And I think I would say our third intention here in this space was really to create a diverse mix of different uses and different seatings and different tabletops, I'll call it. So Chris, if you want to go to one of the next renderings. So you can see here what we're trying to do is strategically place planters and green spaces around existing trees so we can preserve them. And then what we have done with the remaining open space is provide a diversity of different types of seatings, and that it could include movable tables and chairs, different benches that would still stay even during winter, just so the space is interesting. And something I personally appreciate quite a bit is just a tabletop, just to provide a large variety of different types of spaces, different types of seating and different types of interaction, especially when they are using the space in different ways for people to gather in different quantities.
Yeah,
And
and I would say here, just Gary, that some of the furnishings, right? This is just sort of an overarching idea, right? So whether their tables are movable, if they're fixed styles, right? This is just something for us to gather input on. So this is, you know, what we're using these as a planning tool and as a conversation tool. So, you know, I think Gary's going through and giving our understanding of how we've come to some of these conclusions and what we're making the best use of the case for. But I just wanted to make that clear that, you know, these are meant for discussion and for comment.
certainly, and I think we're in this render, we are showing specific materials, but we are very open to that evolving as we get more input. And you'll tell from the Washington Street to Harvard Street, we're also looking at a slightly different palette, but again, to emphasize, this is an evolving design, and this is just a snapshot of where we can be. Chris, if you just want to go to the next slide, we can just kind of look through it. So this one here, as opposed to the previous slide, which kind of shows you the green space that begins to buffer both the sidewalk, the cycle track, and the traffic, just to create a calmer space. You can tell here a different view from the other side, from the sidewalk. So I think it's rather pleasant for both sides. And I think
Brookline Village.
Yeah. I think similarly, and once you see the third one, you'll understand that the first two are much more similar to each other than the third focus area that we had. This one here, this intersection here, we've also similarly reconfigured the intersection, so the open space is a little shifted a bit more towards the planned south, but there's a lot of complexities particularly in this corner where we're balancing both circulation while trying to again preserve existing trees while also creating a bit of green space to buffer some of the noise and the traffic from the intersection, and then on top of that also create a space for people to sit and relax. So those are the main design criteria for this space here. And right now we are looking at effectively consolidating this traffic flow from that intersection, and then bisecting the space into two kind of smaller pockets that are lined with wooden benches.
Here's a perspective going down the sidewalk. You have the existing street trees in the foreground here with the tree grates, some benching. Again, styles vary, but this is just an interpretation of what that area could look like with the available space. And you can see, just for perspective, some of the building facades in the background to see sort of where you are positionally.
And certainly very similar, call it kit of parts in terms of the strategies we're trying to utilize to create a pleasant space. That said, I think, again, the geometries, the materials, those are still literally not set in stone. It's again, an evolving design, and we're very open to feedback. So,
Weybridge.
unlike the other two, which I think is much closer to different retail and commercial locations, this one, Weybridge, is in a much more residential neighborhood, and the area is also just smaller. So the strategies are, I also call it, rather different, in that there is still a bit of roadway reconfiguration that allows for an opportunity. And in this case, what we decided upon was just to make that opportunity just more green space.
Yeah,
I think
reclaiming
yeah.
some of the roadway, turning it into green space, and sort of tightening up the intersection.
Yeah, and I think that, unlike the other spaces, we don't think it's very appropriate to do benches or similar plaza type seating, just considering the context. But I think even just having more planting versus roadway has myriad of benefits.
Yeah, so that's sort of the overview of the three locations, sort of pictorially, and sort of a good understanding from Gary on how we've come to those conclusions and what the layouts look like in our initial plan. So that's sort of our initial review of the perspectives for the three critical areas.
I appreciate that. Do you have anything for Gardner, or is that outside?
Not in this presentation? No.
Okay. I guess so I'll start, and then we'll hear from board members, and then we'll talk to the public, and then we'll come back to the board. So I guess a bioswale was suggested for this particular area at one point, and for Gardner. Did you consider that? And is that possible, feasible, doable?
So I would say that we looked at, I mean, we have yet to really look at some of like the, if we want to do a rain garden or I think bioretention basin, right? Something sort of that you would use as a drainage improvement. These graphics do not show that. This is just more of conveying what we could do with the space, right? From a landscape perspective, so like what it would look like. It's more of a visual of like, hey, what this corridor would look like. We've looked at a two-dimensional for so long. Like, what does that finished product could look like? But Brian, I mean, that has come up, yeah, absolutely, especially in this location where we have some more green space at the intersection. So I think that's a point well taken for future design phases.
Cool. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, with respect to the other two renderings, we've had movable furniture in some parks for many years now, and it seems to work.
Okay.
So I'm not too worried about it walking away. You never know. But I think especially at Washington and Cypress, one of those renderings looked great. And I would love to have a cup of coffee out there on a day like this. So, and I'm really excited for the potential for Washington and Harvard, what some of the old timers I understand used to call Harvard Square. So just to be confusing. So I think this looks great. It's exciting, and these are the kind of payoffs that I think all of us were looking forward to finally getting from this project. So those are my 2 cents. Jonathan,
Great.
Post.
Right. Second on the bioswale, and really, I mean, Pearl Street has been one of my favorite projects that I've seen come through here, and it seems to be functioning well. And if you guys can take some inspiration from how that drainage performs and bring it forward, we certainly don't need to build additional underground infrastructure if we don't have to.
You said it's Pearl, Pearl.
Yes.
Point, Jonathan.
I'm sure the transportation staff can get you the plans for that if I'm guessing they're still around, right, Dan? Okay. And then the only other comment I'll have on it, and again, I second that Brian's point that it looks, and I'll say that it looks cooler in a temperature way and in a usable way than what's out there right now. But let's just make sure that the businesses that are abutting those get a good look at those. Oftentimes, with big landscape changes like that, they don't realize that their sign's 60 feet away from the road now, and a bunch of shrubs and benches and other things get in the way of their sign all of a sudden. So let's just be conscious of those.
I would say that Dylan and I hand delivered notices to every single business in that area and Brookline Village, and spoke directly to the owner or manager of every single one. So.
Yep, and I do appreciate that. It's just sometimes they don't, and just I've experienced it before. They don't realize what's happening until the roadway's moved far away, and it's a shock to them.
Of course. Thank you.
So that's all.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a word for additional benches at various places where there's sort of frequent pedestrian activity. I know for a number of my friends who are seniors who are not necessarily with disabilities, but nevertheless, walking becomes difficult when you don't have anywhere where you can sit and rest for a few minutes along the way. So aside from these plazas, if there are places, particularly along Washington Street, where you could put in benches now and again, it would make it a lot easier for pedestrians who need that additional respite in order to be able to walk relatively long distances.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of locations where we could add some of those in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. And yes, Len, go ahead, please.
I had the same comment as Nancy, and you could look to Beacon Street as a model. Frank Cairo had requested that a lot of those benches be installed along Beacon Street, and I'd like to see something similar here.
Great minds.
I wrote it down now. I'll put an asterisk on it.
Wendy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my comment was similar about the benches, and also specifically in the picture that you showed of Washington and Harvard, that you have a lot of kind of assumed seating that aren't benches, that are on the planters. You had pictures of people sitting there, and so those don't have backs on them. And I think for a lot of people, seating without backs is not, a bench has a back, and so if you're an older person or who, not necessarily older, just anybody, having something next to those planters so that you're not just sitting on top of the planting area.
Yeah, good point. We've had parklets before, like that are similar to that. That we also that also should be shared with you guys, Chris.
Okay,
No,
great.
just
My
as I
back
think.
hurts now, so yes, I do support.
I mean, those planted the I don't know. Can you go back to that rendering?
Sure.
Like they themselves can be the back, and you could put a seating in front of them. But I think just the way you have people sitting is not something that a lot of people find comfortable for a long period of time.
No, understandable.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good feedback.
Yeah. And Dan Murphy or Dan or Sam, can we get some of the parklet stuff that's we've done in the last few years over to Chris and Alan, please?
Absolutely.
Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, so on the trees, on the rendering, on the slide that was up at the non-commercial area. So here we have nice tall trees, whether they're elms or maples. But can we have those in the business zones, such as Cypress there or Brookline Village? versus the smaller trees. And the reason why I asked that is these trees grow much taller, and it's easy to see the businesses underneath the trees, where a 15-foot cherry tree will block the facade of the business signs in the commercial area. So not sure if it's a safety issue that we go with the smaller trees, but a larger tree canopy would be something I'd like to see, and I think would be great. So thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll say we can probably in some of the renderings you might see larger trees such as this one, those that represent existing trees, and then we also probably showed smaller trees representing proposed trees, not necessarily that they're the final height. So yes, definitely receptive to that comment.
Thank you.
Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Yep. One other thing as I was looking at this section on Weybridge right here stood out to me. There's no streetlights currently shown in these renderings. That's going to be a big component, and I'm sure if I don't mention it, Dave Trivette will at some point. But pedestrian scale lighting is very important on our streets. As you can see, it's very vibrant according to this photo of people biking and walking around here.
There's one,
Washington
but we
Street
could, I
right
mean,
now,
we could
yeah.
add, there's one or two in the back, but we can add some more for context. But yes, I do agree
Yeah.
that we could, just to make it more visually representative of what's out there, what will be out there, you can add some.
Yeah,
And not just part of the graphics, that is part of the plan for the project, is to add in pedestrian scale lighting along the entire corridor.
The placement of them is also very important along the parking, that they're not placed where cars open doors. This is going to be a very narrow corridor. There's not going to be a lot of space for people to open doors. We want people to abide by the parking spaces that we give them and not stick their cars out slightly into the roadway or anything like that. And that's going to help along the way. So if we can show how the lighting is going to look, especially showing that pedestrian scale lighting, which is, I assume, going to be spaced more densely just by the nature of pedestrian scale lighting needing to be lower to the ground. That would go a long way to showing what Washington Street could be.
Okay, thank you. Richard, last time, and then we're gonna open up to the public.
Yeah, just with those lighting, are we planning to accomplish dark skies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there's a fixture that we've talked with DPW already as far as, fixture selection, making sure it's consistent, making sure it's consistent with town standards. So yes, that is something that we're going to incorporate into this project, because lighting is one of those things you want it to be complementary and or consistent with other lighting improvements in and around the town.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. We're going to open this up now to members of the public who would like to weigh in. So if you would like to comment on this item, please use the raise hand function, and I'll try to call on folks in the order that I see them. And just so we're clear, what I think the team is looking for feedback on is some of the things that we've been discussing around the overall look and feel and sort of furniture types and things like that. So again, none of this is set in stone. It's 25%. We got a long way to go, but it's good to get feedback along the way. So please use the raise hand function if you would like to comment on this one. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll close the public comment period on this particular item. We'll come back to the board. So Chris and Alan, do you think you've got enough to go on? Okay, great. Well, in that case, Gary, thank you. And I'm sure we'll see you folks again real soon.
Well, I still have, so Brian, my next agenda item is placemaking.
Yes, yeah,
I'm sorry, wayfinding.
Being very formal, yes.
Okay, I was like.
We'll move on now to the next agenda. No, go ahead, Chris. We'll take that one up too.
Do I need to change my coat and then go in?
Yes, you do. And wear a top hat, please.
Okay.
This is item 5C, wayfinding.
Great, great. Thank you all. So wayfinding component of Washington Street. Again, project location, Beacon Street to Brookline Village. We've sort of already reviewed project corridor. Again, extending from Beacon Street to Brookline Village, major intersections at School Street and Cypress Street within Brookline Village, and then project terminating at Station Street. We've looked at the goals and objectives. These are the same goals and objectives that previous meetings that we've had. They've stayed consistent: complete streets, multimodal access, ADA compliance, enhancing streetscape and emergency access, pedestrian scale lighting and roadway lighting, and then enhancing the commercial and vibrancy and promoting economic development. Project overview. Most of you are familiar with this project: full depth roadway project, roadway construction, intersection improvements, geometric changes, new cement concrete sidewalks, sidewalk level separated bicycle lanes, utility upgrades, and then two at the bottom, wayfinding improvements and enhanced streetscape are really what we're here to talk about tonight. So our wayfinding commitment. So as part of the select board vote in February of 2025, the select board voted to continued support of the Washington Street Complete Streets project remains contingent upon the inclusion of improved wayfinding in Brookline Village. So that was a direct call to us as the design team and working with Public Works to incorporate wayfinding into this project for both the Washington Street in general, but also in particular within Brookline Village. Over the past year or so, we have been working with our design team on a conceptual plan and information gathering session about placemaking signage and areas of interest in and around the Washington Street corridor. If you're involved with our mailing list for website announcements and information sharing, you've seen some of this that we're going to go through tonight, but this map is available on the project website to show areas of interest in and around Washington Street, and also to show the various types of placemaking signage we are looking to potentially implement along the corridor, whether that's a gateway sign at really entrance locations along Brookline Village, if it's an informational kiosk, directional signs for vehicles, and also directional signs for pedestrians and bicycle users as well. So there's a mix of that here. We could move forward and look at some of the locations along the corridor, but I really wanted to focus on over the past month and a half, actually 2 months at this point. We have prepared a survey that was distributed to the public through an email chain, through our distribution list. It went live at the end of January. And what we really wanted to get out of that survey was feedback, right? What are we really looking for? What are the concerns of abutters? What are the concerns of businesses? What is this wayfinding program going to look like? What do we need to direct users, residents, community members to? So the survey was a mix of both qualitative and quantitative questions. We included a ranking of destinations in and around Brookline Village and Washington Street. Some of these topics of discussion were navigation within Brookline Village. The results will inform our wayfinding design approach as this project advances. And at the end, with most of our surveys, we included an additional comment section where it's more of a free form approach to get additional feedback from the participant. So our survey, like I said, we developed a questionnaire to solicit community input, and then tonight we put together some nice visuals, some graphics to show a summary of the feedback that we received from that wayfinding survey. So our first one is our survey results. This was a ranking of destinations. So I would say you got to look at this a little bit of it in the inverse, right? Where the most important is a 0 or a 1 to the least important is a 9 or a 10, right? So this is a ranking from 1 to 10. So to me, what really stood out here is, I don't know how many people go to the courthouse, but what really stood out to me was the consistency with the restaurants, the cafes, the retail stores, public library, really sort of all of these, the variety of destinations that people are looking to go to in and around Brookline Village was actually nice to see, right? So it's not just one destination, it's a variety of destinations, which is great to see. So this was very helpful for us to see, like, okay, what is really important? What do we need to focus on as we proceed with our wayfinding study and design? And now we have some pie charts, right? So these are some of the questions that we asked the public to help us inform our decisions. 29 responses here. I know when I've entered Brookline Village, over 48% agreed that they knew that they were entering Brookline Village, and 27% strongly agreed. So to me, that's a big majority of that pie saying that they know that they've entered Brookline Village already. So to me, that was a little surprising, that high of a percentage. I think that might just be some bias versus, the everyday traveler to Brookline Village. But I think, this project, we could do a better job of really highlighting those end caps to get in and out of Brookline Village. Is it easy to find retail and restaurant options? Again, strong percentage agreeing and strongly agreeing that it's easy to find retail and restaurant options within Brookline Village. So again, pretty significant majority to on the positive, both agreeing and strongly agreeing to be able to find retail and restaurant options. And about, again, 29 responses of the survey question. Easy to find municipal buildings. Over 60% said either that they agree or strongly agree, which split evenly between neutral and disagreeing to find municipal buildings or no public services. So present day, I know we've heard a lot of feedback about finding of certain businesses or amenities or municipal buildings within the corridor. But I mean, the results that we've shared tonight do show that most of the people in and around the area are finding or agree that it's easy to find some of the services and buildings in and around Washington Street. Now we get to parking, and the pie chart really changes. So previous responses, there was a large majority that say, yes, we agree or strongly agree that, yes, we can find the courthouse, we can find the library, we can find the restaurants. When we get to the parking response, 29 responses again, the pie chart looks very different as far as makeup, right? A lot of different colors with a lot more sort of even percentages. So this tells me that it's not as clear, right? So 31% in this case disagree with that, and 24 are do not apply, and over 10 strongly disagree. So you're right there, 40% plus or minus either disagree or strongly disagree that it's easy to find parking close to my destination in Brookline Village. So to me, this is the most telling graphic in this entire wayfinding exercise, is that parking is an issue, finding parking and finding available parking is an issue. So this really backs up what we've heard to date on parking and really necessitating additional studies for parking, and also maximizing the parking to the extent we can with the Washington Street project.
One thing to note too, with actually both of these ones, is the first time that actually people answered does not apply to me. On the previous ones, we had the color available, but nobody responded that way. So for this one, doesn't apply to me. There could be a number of reasons. Maybe they aren't going shopping, but also it could be that they're, using some other alternate mode of transportation. Either they're close enough, they're walking, they could be biking or what have you, where they're not looking for parking.
Yep. And same thing for the school, right? So this is the
Yeah.
same thing. Good point, Alan, as far as bringing that up, right? If you have 29 response and you don't have a child or not part of the school system, then yes, that really would not be you will not be part of that question. So here, 24% agree, 17% neutral, which that to me is kind of on the fence, right? Whether you think it's easy or not to figure out where the schools are. So to me, I would almost consider that as a disagree, just because if you're on the fence, you should know where the school is. So I would consider that more of, disagreeing that it's easy to find where the schools are. So again, pretty telling as to where the issues are with respect to wayfinding signage in and around the area. And then the last one, or actually there's a couple more, but this one here is transit. So over 60% either agree or strongly agree that it's easy to access transit within Brookline Village, and then 25% neutral. So a small percentage really disagree. 7% really disagree that it's easy to access transit within Brookline Village, including appropriate signage. So it's a smaller number that I anticipated when we initiated the survey. And then finally, is it easy to navigate Brookline Village? Again, more, excuse me, more of a distributed pie here, right? So you have larger percentages for some of the other colors. 29% strongly disagree, and 18% disagree. So you do see some frustrations and struggles navigating Brookline Village by bicycle. So again, these are really helpful to highlight the issues and sort of the shortfalls or shortcomings of signage and or navigation through certain areas of Washington Street. So that's what I had for wayfinding results. So pretty telling, right? Picture says 1,000 words, and really true is the case here.
Sure does. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Couple of comments. First of all, I'm wondering whether 29 responses is really enough of a sample to make decisions on. Secondly, I mean, for example, it's easy to navigate Brookline Village by bike. Are the persons who filled out this survey, did they understand this is about wayfinding? Or
Yes.
are they making, yeah, so they're not necessarily making a comment. I'm just wondering whether their concerns are not so much that they don't know where to go, but that they have safety concerns. They don't feel that, you know, there's adequate bike lanes or whatever. It just strikes me as strange that people who drive cars know where they're going, but people on bikes don't. And I assume that somehow that what they're really trying to say is it's not easy to bike, as opposed to we don't know where we're going. Do you
So
have any way of
absolutely. So the
understanding?
survey included a introduction that
Mhm.
explained what we're looking for, what the process is, and specific to wayfinding. So it was pretty clear to the participant that this was a focus on wayfinding. So there's other, you know, we've had other avenues for soliciting input on bicycle safety, navigability, walkability, but this was a focus on wayfinding, and that was clear as far as the introduction to the survey itself.
And what about the small number of respondents in the survey?
Yeah, understood. You know, we were expecting with the size of the distribution list and the amount of outreach, you know, we received less than, you know, 30 respondents in total. I think 29 was the highest in some of these questions. That's just the level of participation we received. We sent out bi-weekly email reminders to the distribution list. We flyered, I think we've put out flyers. There was a very strong engagement to get that input, and ultimately we ended up with about 30 or so, 29 responses in some of them.
So, thank you, Chris. Yeah, Nancy, I take your point, but I guess I also would suggest that I think we all know that we need to improve wayfinding in the village. So, this has been a discussion for many years. I remember we tried to set up a parking benefit district just to do things like that never really got off the ground. So, I do think we need to sort of pick a wayfinding template, a font, a design, or whatever you want to call it, kind of stick with it and just make it as intuitive as possible for folks to know how to get to the Kent Street lot and how to get to, you know, the library and other places. So I guess to me, that's sort of what I think the select board meant when they tacked this requirement onto the vote. And so can you go back a couple of slides? Sorry, Nancy, do you have your hand up still?
Oh, well, I don't mean to say that I think we don't need wayfinding. I
Fair.
completely agree. But what I'm having trouble understanding is how the survey really helps, other than it confirms that people don't know, have trouble parking, and they don't necessarily know where all the parking options are. Aside from that, I'm not sure how this helps you to focus on what exactly it is that you need to do.
Well, I think it confirms our priority, right? I think it confirms our priority that the lack of knowledge to where parking, if it's not on Washington Street proper, I think that that's important, right? If we have to sign areas for municipal lots or areas where there is parking, and that is a big concern based on the data we've gathered, then I think that that's one of the priorities we would look to address as part of the wayfinding program.
Can you scroll back a couple of slides, please?
Anything in particular, Brian?
I think it was the one with the rendering, the first slide, actually. No, there was one with like 4 different types of signs. I don't know if those were
Oh, that's right
options.
here.
Yeah, I don't know if you were looking for feedback on those. I mean, I guess what I would say is this, and this is not something that Ty and Bond is going to be able to solve. You know, we as a town need to come together and sort of all get on the same page. A bunch of signs went up recently with arrows to different places that it's really small font, and I mean it's a nice effort. I just don't think it's going to do much. So you know, I've seen intuitive signage and wayfinding elsewhere. I've also seen an overkill of wayfinding, so we don't want to go down that road. I guess, you know, I like the directional sign for vehicles because I think it's the biggest print and it helps everybody, including pedestrians and bicyclists. But you know, that's just me. I guess I would also say that, you know, we kind of need to settle on a design template, like I mentioned, a font, a size. We need standards. You know, the MBTA actually does a pretty good job of this. They're getting a lot better at standardizing their signage and their wayfinding across the system. We need to go through a similar process in Brookline. And it's not all on you to do that. But it is a little disjointed now, I would suggest. So that's my 2 cents. Nancy, are you good? Okay. David Trevette, and then we'll go to the public.
All right, thank you very much. David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, speaking for myself. I'm really concerned. Well, I want to echo the concern that Nancy raised about the small number of respondents, and that brings up another concern about just respondent bias, respondent population bias, about who is it. I mean, we saw this in the Vision Zero project. I mean, I really had to get after the consultants because of the way in which things were being interpreted as this is what Brookline thinks without paying attention to who it was who was responding to that particular question. And so if the people who are responding to some of these questions are people who come into Brookline Village frequently, then yeah, they probably do know where things are. If there are people who only come in once a year, but we might want to attract more of those people, then no, they probably don't know where things are. I remember conversations, I've been here for 15 years, and even a few years ago, I would have conversations with people and they would refer to the Brookline Village Library. And I'm thinking, huh? I can't think of a Brookline Village Library. And after several back and forth, I'd think, oh, you mean the main library? I never thought of that as being in Brookline Village. I thought of Brookline Village as being this really narrow spot. And so I don't know where Brookline Village really starts. I'm saying that who answers the questions totally affects the answers you get. And so to the extent that you just get enough of a general sense that, as you said, confirms some of what you want to do, that's good. But I really warn, and this I've said this in multiple projects, do not overinterpret survey responses because it's going to distort what people in general think and want. I'm a very good supporter of wayfinding. I agree with points have been made, and I made this comment. I can't remember whether it was a transportation board meeting, a Washington Street Design meeting, another meeting, or the parking study meeting, where one of the examples shown was unreadable from another town. It was unreadable in terms of what the detail for a particular parking lot. You couldn't read it from the street. It was helpless. It was useless. So absolutely, fonts big enough, keep it simple, make it visible, and let's help people get to where they want to go. And again, do something with that sense of place. So those are my comments. Don't overinterpret the results. Thank you very much for the chance to speak.
Thank you, David. Wendy, I see your hand, and then we'll go to the public.
Thanks. So just to that point about who's answering the survey, do we know who's answering the survey? Did you ask people about whether they live in the area, or I didn't see any kind of information about who was taking the survey?
So we have the raw data. It was just we distributed to our, again, it said we distributed to our email list that we've gathered through the project, and we've also I think there was some physical flyers and or mailing flyers and announcements. So we tried to capture as much of an audience as possible. So I don't have that information on the top of my top of my head.
I'm just curious. I mean, it's not a criticism. I mean, I think you can like look at things all different ways. You could say people who go there the most often probably have like a really good sense of what needs to be there. Like there's lots of different ways to. So I was just curious, but and I guess my other point about it is, well, my other question is to the comments about font size and what the signs look like and everything. Will that come to us, or where does that decision get made?
I would have to talk with the DPW team about how that process works, but we are working with the Department of Public Works. We have also we're working with the firm Arrow Street to go through and put together some of the wayfinding designs and signage, but we would talk with Public Works as far as how that information is shared and how input is solicited for the wayfinding signage as this project advances. And I do just want to reiterate the fact that we're not here to say, okay, more than 50% voted yes on they agree or not, and we're going to make a decision on that. This is strictly a guiding exercise for us to see what things that we need to concentrate on, what are the glaring issues, what's clear, what's not clear. So we're really just using this as a beacon, really, to help us as this project advances.
I mean, I guess I mean, I'll just say, like, it's a little confusing to me in a way, because I would think that they're like the things that you list and that people are saying are like the things that people go to a commercial area for, right? They go to municipal buildings, they go to businesses, they go to restaurants, they're going to the trolley, and they need to find parking. And they need to get there by bike, and they need to be able to walk there. So I guess I would think that we just sort of know that you need to, like, you go to Davis Square, you go to Waltham, like there's certain areas that have really good signage around parking, where you're going. So don't we just have best practices to refer to for these things, and even the printing size and what these signs look like? I guess I don't understand the concern about the survey results and things, because it seems like we know that people need to find ways to get to the places that are there.
I think it was just more of figuring out what are the what are the, if there's anything that's glaring, if there's anything that, we can say, okay, really, does this really confirm what we've talked about in the past about some of the issues where there's a lack of signage or a lack of direction or clarity? That's all. And we just wanted to convey those results back to the transportation board.
Yeah. Thanks.
Wendy? Okay, once again, we'll open this up to the public. If you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function, and we would love to hear from you. Okay, Emily, go ahead, please.
Hello. I am not seeing myself, but I'm going to assume you can see me.
We can see and hear you.
Okay, great. My comment about this is that if you were to drive into Brookline Village, you would never be able to see any of the parking lots or know how many cars are parked in any of the parking lots. And a lot of the parking lots are really widely dispersed. Like if you try and go to some of these parking lots and then find that they're full and then try and go to another one, it's like a huge maneuver to do it. And so I'd really encourage you to look at, and this is going to sound really obscure, but the Byward Market area in Ottawa, which is a very dense pedestrian area and has parking lots distributed throughout it that are, you wouldn't be able to see them, but it has extremely good parking signage in that when you drive in, you can see a sign with kind of a number of like how many parking spaces are available in each direction.
Say the place again. Byward Market in Ottawa.
It's Byward Market in Ottawa. I can put it into the chat.
No, that's great. I'll look it up right now. Thank you. Scott Englander, go ahead, please.
Sure. I just wanted to mention, I assume everyone knows about the recent study that Tool Design has done on parking in Brookline Village. So they actually did some intercept studies where they talked to a lot of people and they did inventories and they came up with a whole list of recommendations. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. A lot of that legwork has already been done.
Yep, good point. And I believe that's been shared.
Great.
Any additional items, comments on this item?
Give the proper consultant credit. It was Stantec that did the Brooklyn and Washington Square studies.
Thank you, Dan.
Sorry. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Great. So Chris Allen, thank you. Hope we've given you some feedback here that's useful and helpful.
Absolutely, as always.
Look forward to getting the next update.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Time
much.
Bond and Halverson.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, we're going to move on to 5D. We're 15 minutes behind. Presentation and discussion of South Brookline to Brookline High School bike route feasibility study. Dun, 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 dun.
I'll happily take this one.
Was this Tool?
This was Tool.
This was Tool. There you
And
go.
we have Tool with us tonight. So our next agenda item, as Brian said, is the South Brookline to Brookline High School bike route study. This has been well over a year in the works with Tool, with Preston and Alexis, I think, and Kabir, who are joining us tonight. We've worked through many iterations of this project and done outreach through different focus groups and presentations to the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I'm really excited to finally present all the work that they've been doing over the last year in collaboration with our team to evaluate the different opportunities that we have to build a safe bike network from South Brookline to the high school. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Alexis, Preston, and Kabir. Hopefully, Dylan, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, I already have sharing capabilities. Perfect. Thank you.
Sure, Sam. Good to see everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. So to start with an overview of the study and why the town took it on, starting with some background that folks are likely familiar with. So in 2022, the Green Routes Network Plan included profiles of all the schools in Brookline and identified the need for an improved connection between South Brookline and Brookline High School, presented some preliminary solutions. In 2023, a priorities document put together by the Safe Routes to School Task Force similarly reinforced that as a priority. And then the Bicycle Advisory Committee did some great work following that report to envision what this connection could look like. And then in 2025, the Vision Zero Action Plan, which kind of highlighted the high-risk streets in the town, highlighted many of the streets as part of the high priority network that would be included in a bike route between South Brookline and Brookline High School. And that's the map that you can see here with the high priority network in blue. So to put it succinctly, why this study, there have been numerous community requests for a safe bicycling route from South Brookline to the high school. This aligns with resident requests for speed management and traffic calming along many of the streets between those destinations. There are limited existing routes to access Brookline High School from South Brookline, and a lack of comfortable bike facilities on streets with high vehicle speeds and high volumes. So the purpose of the study that we supported the town with was to define preferred options for a low-stress bike route from South Brookline to Brookline High School and identify opportunities for implementation projects. And backing up a little bit to talk about what we mean when we say low stress, we mean comfortable for bicycle riders of all ages and abilities, including youth and families, which is especially important in this case if this is to be a bicycle route to intentionally connect youth to school. And so we were thinking about potential low stress infrastructure options as characterized by protected bike lanes that would have separation between riders and vehicle traffic, or bicycle boulevards, which are calmer, traffic calmed routes on residential streets, and overall very little mixing with higher speed vehicular traffic. And another priority was to design a route that would be continuous. A bike route is really only as strong and as comfortable as its weakest link. And we're very aware that even one or two bad intersections or bad segments could keep parents from wanting to see their kids bike to school on a route, and intuitive to navigate, understanding that these are some of our less experienced road users. Some youth biking to school might not even have driver's licenses yet, and so it needs to be easier to handle. And so the process we followed was starting with drafting all of the possible routes and streets that could connect with each other with some combination of protected bike lanes and bicycle boulevards, and then evaluating those options relative to one another and developing a feasibility study report. And so Sam will talk more about this when I pass him the mic, but going forward, we envision this moving forward in phases with deeper community engagement. And there was some community involvement as part of this study as well. We had 2 meetings with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. The first one focused on identifying the route options and the priorities for how we should evaluate them. The second one presenting the results of the route evaluation and supporting analysis, and sharing back feedback from the community survey. We had an online survey for the project open from June to August of 2025, which received 275 responses. Many of these were bicycle riders, and it is important to hear from bike riders to design a useful bike route. In the future, community engagement would definitely have a broader reach on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. We also had about a third of the respondents being parents of school-age children in Brookline. So on the right are some of the results from the question that we asked about priorities, which helped us think about how to evaluate routes. And the survey was designed to be mostly free response. And so we got some really detailed information about how these routes feel today for people who bike and what kinds of changes people might like to see to make them feel more comfortable. So we were thinking about this continuous route, which would be about 2 miles, in 3 distinct sections: the southern study area, kind of around Putterham Circle, and down to the border with Dedham, the central study area, or no, sorry, Boston, the central study area along Lee and Clyde streets, and then the northern study area. And in the southern area, there were 5 options that we studied using a combination of protected bike lanes and longer routes that would use residential streets. In the central study area, we did consider 3 options, but ultimately moved forward studying just the one on Lee and Clyde streets because we determined that the other 2 options could not feasibly be made low stress for biking. And then in the northern study area, we studied 4 options, of which really 2 we've established could be made low stress for biking. And so an example of what this looks like in the full report, for each route option, we defined the design changes that would be needed along each segment to achieve low stress biking, potential trade-offs associated with the changes, and any coordination needs between departments and between agencies in order to move this forward in the future. So each of these numbers in this example graphic corresponds with notes to that effect. For the route evaluation, we structured it around 3 overarching metric areas. So evaluating routes based on how well they would provide a low stress and safe bicycle facility, opportunities and barriers for implementation, and how they would improve network connectivity and access townwide. So this is an example of route evaluation reports at a summary level for one of the sub areas of the study. There's a full appendix with detailed scoring of benefits and trade-offs of each route option, and at the summary level, focusing on the relative strengths and relative weaknesses of each option. So we see this as a starting point for future community engagement and discussions about relative priorities and what it might look like to move forward this route in segments. And then we also conducted analysis to evaluate the potential for some multi-lane corridors in South Brookline to be candidates for road diets and safety improvements, the ones that were included in the route options. So in the upper right corner, this is an example of what this could look like, which is known as a 4-to-3 road diet, where a street with 4 lanes is converted to 2 travel lanes with a shared turn lane or some variation of that, and this creates additional space for bicycle lanes. So the analysis considered traffic volumes relative to roadway capacity, vehicle speeds throughout the day, and the crash history of these corridors relative to Brookline as a whole, and really trying to find places, really trying to evaluate the places where these corridors are operating under capacity for much of the day in a way that contributes to high speeds and presents an opportunity to advance safety improvements. And just to bring it back to the critical role of speed and why we were looking at this, excess capacity provides opportunity for high vehicle speeds. And so some might be familiar with this graphic from the Vision Zero action plan, but a vehicle going 20 miles per hour in the event of a pedestrian crash, the pedestrian has a 13% likelihood of fatality or severe injury, and that goes up to 40% at 30 miles an hour and 73% at 40 miles an hour. So the traffic data that we collected on some of the multi-lane corridors in South Brookline recorded a very high percentage of drivers traveling at these high speeds that can result in serious collisions. So now I will pass it to Sam to talk about next steps.
Thank you, Alexis. So as Alexis alluded to earlier, the segmentation of these, what would be individual projects for the town and this board, ties really nicely into our final agenda item of the evening later in terms of project prioritization. As we've clearly, or hopefully clearly defined as part of a presentation earlier this year in terms of tier 1 to 4 projects and the requirements for public engagement. Any one of these three, any option preferred route for each of the 3 sections would require its own public process and engagement in order to move it forward. How the board ultimately chooses to move forward with or not move forward with these options is totally at your discretion. But I do believe that we will seamlessly take these individual projects and include it as part of the project prioritization for the transportation board to understand that our staff is only capable of running so many public processes at one time, but that ultimately across what would be 3 separate projects would create a cohesive connection from South Brookline to Brookline High School, weighing the different pros and cons, as Alexis stated, in the scoring matrices for each of the different options for both the south and northern section, with the central section along Lee Street being one that is the spine of the project. So for tonight, we're not asking for any approvals of the individual route selection. We are looking for the T-Board to adopt this as a planning document that will be entered into the project prioritization matrix for discussion. We would come back to the board at a future date following public engagement to get your approval for the implementation of any one of these study areas, given that the majority of these 2 miles require some significant change in cross-section, mostly in the form of a road diet. So just want to level set there a little bit. Again, thank you so much to the Tool team. This has been a really long time coming, and it's in a really amazing document. Hopefully, probably everyone didn't get to the 246 pages tonight, but I really do hope that you are able to look at some of the speed data, volume data that was collected. I think the road diet analysis section is really important for consideration. And I would turn it over back to Chairman Kane and any questions that the board has.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much, Alexis. I think this is an important project, and I got to give credit to Richard Murphy, who just raised his hand, for keeping this on the proverbial burner for so long, and organizing bike rides from Baker to the high school and doing all that good stuff. So Richard, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I know we called this the bike ride to Brookline High, but my perspective on it, Sam, was it's more or less trying to make the roadway safer, and doing so probably through a road diet, which will provide bicycle infrastructure along the roadway. That what I hear a lot in South Brookline is the speed of vehicles and how pedestrians are get struck in crosswalks, like we hear in Harvard, over on Harvard Street in Coolidge Corner. But I just probably so that it's more receptive of roadway safety. It's kind of like what I was emphasizing in the title, and trying not to have bicycle infrastructure as far as leading the title. I think it's basically for all users that we want to provide safety on these roadways, and that's the only thing I would like to emphasize tonight. But appreciate everything that Alexis showed us tonight. Thank you, and for Tools for putting this whole study together, and for your support, Sam, on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I totally agree that as much as this was a study to determine what routes would be feasible for safe biking, this is holistically a safety improvement project that would result, the proven benefits of road diets if that were to be the direction that it went. So, thank you, Richard.
Hear, hear. Okay, anybody else from the Transportation Board have anything they wanted to ask or say? Leonard, go ahead.
I had a question about the last slide that showed the different regions. Are the boundaries of those fixed in stone? Because I'd like to see the central study region shifted a bit further south. And perhaps a bit further north as well?
So these study areas are fixed. We've done extensive work, collecting speed and volume data and analyzing the different route options for each of them. And so there are certainly minor shifts that could be made in terms of identifying the regions, but in terms of the core study areas, they are somewhat fixed. So apologies for that, Len.
Thank you.
Okay. David Trevette, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Brian. Again, David Trevette, Chair of Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It seems like many, many, many months ago that Richard Murphy came to our Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting and sort of presented this in concept and what he was trying to push for and trying to advocate for. And I vaguely recall that we actually may have sent something to the Transportation Board expressing our general support and that we would do this. Alexis did show that famous slide that we know that shows the different levels of risk for pedestrians being struck at different speeds. But the rest of the presentation didn't really mention pedestrians at all. And given that pedestrian safety is being cited as a reason, I would like to hear more conversation about pedestrian benefits. I think there are some pedestrian benefits in the design based on previous exchanges and previous presentations, but I would like to see more attention paid to that. Certainly, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee itself, since that initial concept discussion with Richard, has not been involved in this at all. And so I would like to see a little more exchange there, a little more direct addressing of pedestrian improvements that either are or could be incorporated into the design. Right now, to be perfectly honest, I do not walk to South Brookline because it's just too damn far. And since I'm not a bike rider, I usually drive there. And quite frankly, Lee Street, Clyde Street are a mess because the speed limit changes every time you look around. I cannot believe that it's been recently posted as 20 miles per hour on a street that most people drive at 40 or higher. We need to be reasonable, we need to be balanced, and we need to be safe. So I would love more opportunities to think about what will help the pedestrians along that corridor and more chances. So thank you very much for the chance to speak.
Thanks, David. Emily, go ahead, please.
Hi, could you go back to the next step slide, please? So this is a comment that I made when this came to the Bicycle Advisory Committee. On this slide, in purple on Walnut Street is shown likely infeasible as high comfort bike connection. And I just would like to say that on Walnut Street, there is also an elementary school that many, many kids walk and cycle to. And I can see lots of ways actually that this could be made a high comfort bicycle connection by, and I say this as a resident of Walnut Street, by, for example, making the street one way and dedicating more space to sidewalks and bicycle lanes. And I'm really concerned that by listing this as likely infeasible as a high comfort bicycle connection, that it will become very hard to make that indeed a high comfort bicycle connection and a high comfort pedestrian place. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Wendy Friedman, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, this wasn't going to be part of my comment, but since Emily brought it up and as another Walnut Street resident right at that area by the school, I agree about the one way. I think that there's lots to discuss there. But my comment was going to be and I know we're not talking design, we're just looking large, kind of more bird's eye view here, but that I hope that there's consideration when thinking about these things, particularly on a street like Lee and Lee and Clyde, to think about a cycle track in the center of the street, which also can help with the pedestrian safety. Right now, can't think, I guess maybe there's some pedestrian crossing on that street, but you're really taking your life into your hands to cross Lee Street. But if there were a, a cycle track in the center that also had some space at certain crossings for pedestrians, it would be a much safer and easier street to go across, and we wouldn't have the issues with driveways and landscapers and that sort of thing. So I think that it's not a design that we've used in Brookline, but it's used very effectively elsewhere. So I hope we consider it in this.
Wendy, if I could, thank you for the comments. Also, Emily and David as well. I would like to say that again, like Wendy said, these are just starting off points, just an evaluation tool. We can't even say that we're even at 10% conceptual design phases. These are just opportunities to make the connections, and we would basically start the public engagement process with a blank slate of saying, hey, these are the routes that were explored, and allow the community and the board to help lead that. If Walnut Street is, if that's the passion is to get a one-way street on Walnut Street, like that's,
yeah,
we're not saying that it's not possible. We're just saying that this is the very preliminary evaluation, and therefore you can see that there are 5 or 6, I forget, different options through there that would require different treatments on different sections. So, and the same with the leading,
Yeah,
Sorry,
I guess
ahead.
I'll just say that I think it's when you're considering what roads are feasible, it's easy to dismiss roads if you're kind of thinking in the usual, like, bike lanes on the side. Well, there's too many curb cuts, there's too many driveways, like this isn't a good street for that. Like, so I totally hear what you're saying, but I also think that it's easy to dismiss roads, like Emily just said, dismissing Walnut because it seems in its current state to not be feasible, but it could be thought of in a different way, which I know is.
No, I appreciate both those inputs. I don't think any of these are completely out of the question here, for sure.
Great, thank you. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just have a question and a comment that relates not so much to this project per se, but to how later on in the meeting, when we're talking about prioritizing different projects, how you describe the scope of the project will, I think, affect the prioritization. So to the extent that people want to go beyond a safe bike route from South Brookline to the high school. All right, that's one way of describing the project that I think gives it a certain cachet in terms of prioritization. Whereas when you start throwing in all sorts of possible improvements, general pedestrian safety, maybe we want to have biking to the an elementary school, pedestrian crossings at various places. I mean, all those are excellent ideas, but the more you pack onto a project, the more difficult it is to evaluate what's the priority of doing this as opposed to other areas where pedestrian safety might be more significant. So I don't know, and maybe this will come up when we discuss prioritization. How you describe the scope of the project, I think, really does affect where it might land in terms of priority.
I think that's a great point, Nancy.
So Sam, we're not going to respond
later.
to every single comment.
Okay,
We don't have time
sorry.
to do that. Okay, Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Okay. I do not need a response to this. I'll preface it with that. I just want to make sure, because I see a yellow line that says state roads on here, that we're not completely discounting the future possibilities for Route 9 along the way. I know there has been efforts of fast and slow to reimagine sections of Route 9 as you approach Gateway East, and around Sabre Street. But that section along the reservoir has 10-foot, 8-foot shoulders on the outside and a median with guardrail for some reason. So that's not all going to last forever. Someday that stuff's going to have to get replaced. And, you know, that's the fastest distance between 2 points. That's why all the cars go that way. So let's not forget about that. In a planning document, it should discuss long-term solutions as well. And engaging with the state is something we have to do.
Secretary Capost will take care of that.
Unlikely.
More likely than me. Scott Englander, go ahead, please. Briefly, please, Scott.
Sure, yeah. I just want to thank the board and the consulting team for and staff for working on this project. It's so critical. Our kid was living out at Hancock Village, and so when he was very sick, for about 4 months, I rode this route, traveled this route, but I'd say 90% on a bike during the winter, and it was horrifying, actually. The incredibly scary and incredibly unsafe, and I think I could identify with a lot of what folks have said here, and so I just want to thank you all for working on this project, and really looking forward to the eventual outcome.
You're here. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to request a motion to accept this as a planning document that will make it sort of an official transportation board accepted planning document. Doesn't mean and we're wedded to it. It just means that we can reference it in the future. Of course, we probably could anyway. But is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Is there a second? Sam, why don't you call the roll?
Glenn,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Nancy. Nancy, are you there?
She might have stepped away.
Jonathan, what should I do?
Yes.
No, sorry, I was just muted.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Cool.
Thank you,
Okay,
Tool.
it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Sam. We'll move on to 5E presentation and discussion on Brookline Parks and Open Spaces 2026 parklet locations. We love us a parklet.
We do. Could somebody enable me to share my screen? Or can pull up the presentation, whatever works.
I just gave you the invite, Jesse.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay. Yes, probably gonna go weird, and sorry, my computer's a little slow today. Are you seeing the weird view or the actual view? You should.
Seeing the weird view.
Weird view. Do you see the real view now?
Yay, there it is.
Okay, perfect. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Jessie Waisner. I am the senior landscape architect for the Parks and Open Space team. We're part of the DPW. So I'm here to talk about parklets. We installed our first parklet in town in 2021 during the COVID days. They were funded through the Mass DOT Shared Streets and Space Program and the American Recovery and Investment Act Fund. Last year we did 3 parklets, one in front of Coolidge Corner on Harvard Street, one in front of Clearflower on Lawton, and then one on in front of Craft Zone on Harvard Street. We stayed out of the village to save some parking with the Pierce project. I just have a couple pictures. If people didn't see them last year, the left is the one with our fun Barbie furniture that we had in front of the Coolidge Corner Theater. The one on the right-hand side is in front of Clearflower. That one, you notice, doesn't have a decking. We don't do a decking on that one. We did it in years past, and all the water pooled up in back of the deck. So to keep the water flowing, that one has no deck. And then last but not least, this was our the Craft Zone one with some of our new furniture we bought this year with our fun yellow, green, and orange chairs, and then the famous egg chairs that everybody seems to love. And last but not least, we have a couple of these parklets that we have put chalkboard paint on, and people leave us fun, inspiring messages. And so far, they have all stayed PC, which we appreciate. And then last but not least, our proposed locations for 2026. So all of these locations are ones we have done in years past, and we have partnered with these businesses before that help us keep an eye on the parklets, let us know if anything needs to be fixed, and help us pick up the trash in them. So first, Lawton Street, once again, in front of Clearflower. The second one is on Beacon Street in front of Eureka Puzzles. We didn't do this last year, but we did do it in 2024. And then last but not least, Craft Zone, again on Harvard Street. And that one just has the note that that one won't be installed until the paving is done along Harvard Street. So that's my very short presentation. This is just a discussion item, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure one of them is, when do the parklets go up? Sometime probably at the end of May, once our team gets through DPW.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Jesse? Love us a parklet. Yes, Wendy, go ahead.
I just have a quick question to clarify. So what determines, so the eating ones are permanent, but the parklets are seasonal?
Our parklets are seasonal and are not open to anybody. They're not affiliated. That's why they're not, well, besides Clearflower, not really in front of restaurants, more in front of businesses.
Right, okay, got it.
Eureka does do some things and like programs at night, and does a couple game nights and stuff like that throughout the season with theirs.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Look forward to seeing them out there, Jesse. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks guys. Have a nice night.
5F, presentation and discussion of a proposed CIP prioritization methodology. So the commissioner is going to have this one. I just wanted to do a brief introduction. So we talked a little bit about this in January, and I think a little bit in February, and I understand it's sort of up in the air. And I mentioned earlier on the discussion of Harvard Street that we weren't supposed to be having, that there's a, you know, I've had some concerns over the years that we've all been doing this as to sort of which projects come to us and how they get selected. And so given all of the priorities that everyone has, and we've heard lots and lots and lots of different priorities, we need to find a way to kind of go about putting them all in some kind of order. And so that's what this is meant to do. And now we're trying to also tie it into the annual capital improvement program project selection so that we have money to do what we want. And we're also trying to make it all theoretically fit together in a way that is intuitive and makes sense to us. And long term, I think the goal, at least I hope the goal, is sort of have one project under construction, one project at 25% design, and another one kind of in a design review committee procedure. So, you know, if we can get this right, it will hopefully make our lives easier going forward. But with that, Commissioner and Rob Guptill, Rob, this is not your first Transportation Board meeting. Sure it's not. No, you were here last time and I wasn't. Never mind. Commissioner, take it away, please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Erin Chute, Commissioner of Public Works. I know that you're on a tight schedule tonight. I think the first thing I'll say is we are going to have project prioritization and CIP on your agenda every meeting that you have until we have it wrapped up and in a good place moving forward. I would like to spend some time at a future meeting talking again about pavement management and maintenance policy. Just specifically about that, just we're trying to weave that and basic maintenance as terms of the overall CIP into all of our complete streets, Vision Zero, multimodal work. And so what we're looking for is a very clear, transparent process, so we don't end up in the situation where we are right now, where people felt that they were surprised that things are happening in a different sequence they didn't know about. That is not our intention. Our intention is to work closely with everyone, to have a system and a process that is really clear, and we are moving forward and working together. So we're going to be talking about CIP tonight. Rob Guptill is going to be talking a bit about kind of a rubric and methodology on how we might prioritize projects. And this would be kind of a basic tool to get us started, but still allow some discretion and discussion from this group, from the public, and all of our other working groups as well. So not going to take more time on that tonight. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to Rob.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So good evening, everyone. So again, my name is Rob Guptill. I have been in this department for about a month and a half now. I'm the Associate Director of Transportation and Mobility. And one of the projects that was assigned to me when I first started, the very first week when I was here, when I was talking with the Commissioner and others, was to take a look at this project prioritization. So tonight, as she mentioned, I have been doing some work and working with some members of the Transportation Board and the DPW staff here to think about how one might go about doing a project prioritization. So I have the presentation that I have, and I think Dylan is going to share it for me. Thank you, Dylan. This is essentially meant to go through the various parts of this quote unquote tool that I put together. And just on the outside, I want to mention that pretty much everything in this is customizable. The things that are in there right now in terms of the tool and the various parts, I have kind of jokingly called them the Rob Guptill tools. So I just want to reiterate though that everything here, and I'll touch on this multiple times as I go through this, everything in here is customizable. So with that, why don't we jump into it? So as the Commissioner was mentioning, the things that this really feeds into is the 5-year financial planning document, which is the capital investment plan. That is where we are setting the project priorities. We are determining staffing priorities for DPW, and and everything in the CIP is built in conjunction with the DPW. But as we've talked multiple times today, priorities are being set by the Transportation Board. So next slide, please. In terms of the methodology for this prioritization tool, there are 4 key parts. And I'll go into each of these in more detail, but just to summarize right here, project list. This is where we have a list of the projects that we're considering. This would be whether it's Harvard Street or Lee and Clyde, as some of the corridors that we've been talking about, or they could be townwide projects or studies. Then we move on to criteria. These are the criteria that we're going to use to assess the projects. These are things like modal criteria and equity and those types of things. We'll go into more detail on those in just a minute. For each of the criteria, we want to assign weights associated with it, and the weights reflect the relative importance that we view each of those criteria as owing to the prioritization methodology. And then finally, the final step is rankings. These are the scores essentially for every project for each criteria, and then coupled with the weights, that's how we get the weighted project ranking for every project, and we're able to rank the projects in an order. And that ranking doesn't necessarily mean that number 1 is going to be the project that we're going to do, but rather with all the things that one needs to consider, both financial, politics, all those additional things, this is the one thing that handles the criteria that we've mentioned. And we have to take that in conjunction with those other priorities that inevitably you and the Transportation Board are going to need to consider. So with that, why don't we move into the details on each of these? So for project list, there are 2 kind of groupings that in talking with my fellow staff here, we've kind of talked about here. One is by project type. So geographically speaking, there are some projects that are corridor specific, something like a Harvard Street or Lee and Clyde, for example. Those are definitely a fair number of the projects that, in my experience of being here for a month and a half, that I've seen that we are working on. But then there are also these town-wide projects. These are things that are things like accessibility upgrades or signal improvements. These are types of projects that are more subject matter, but can be applied with everywhere within that town, essentially. And when we do that, I think it's a conversation that we certainly want to have with the Transportation Board about who gets the discretion to decide where in the town those types of projects go. But that's certainly a conversation that we can have. And then the third kind of grouping for project type are studies and grants. We saw an example of this just now with the South Brookline to BHS study, but there are certainly many types of studies and grants that we can look at in the prioritization methodology. Another grouping is by project status, and this is where it starts to get into the financial implications of these different types of projects. There are committed projects. Those are the ones that in past years, the Transportation Board has already committed financial resources to, and the path is set for continuing those commitments into future years. Then there are uncommitted projects. Those are ones that no commitment has been set yet, and that commitment, both current and future, needs to be committed if the Transportation Board wants to move forward. Finally, there are groups that I've called ongoing. These are projects where past years have been committed and there has been funding given, but future years are not necessarily committed yet. Those are the three kind of project groups. Now, here's a long list, and I don't want to spend a lot of time going through this right now. Suffice to say that this is a list that I think we want to share far and wide and get people's opinions on. Have we captured all the projects that we want to consider in this prioritization methodology? I've listed them here by the project type. So first are the corridor projects. And here you can see various corridors that are listed: Beacon Street, the Davis Path Footbridge, Hammond Street, Harvard Street, various bicycle projects, and street redesign projects that are listed here. But let's move on to the next one. There are townwide projects. As I mentioned, these can be like accessible pedestrian signals, safety zones. The Blue Bites expansion is another one, for example. Speed humps, that's a project that we're about to implement very shortly for phase 1. And then there are studies and grants. The Brookline Village and Washington Square parking study was an example of this. The South Brookline to Brookline High School bike study, that was another example of this. But studies for Chestnut Hill commercial area studies, or Center Street lot study. These are various studies that this board could fund. All right, so moving on to criteria. There are different categories of criteria that I've thought about, and a lot of these are kind of, I would say, the types of criteria that one would generally want to think about in terms of transportation projects. So the first criteria are under the rubric of safety and accessibility. And when I say all project types, I mean here that these are both corridor projects, townwide projects, and studies and grants. There are also equity criteria. And because equity is something that you need to assess on a geographic basis, it would not work to do equity on a townwide projects. Obviously, when you start to apply the funding and decide where townwide projects need to be implemented, you would want to do an equity analysis of that to be able to make sure that you're doing those projects equitably. But at this stage, for the prioritization, we would think about those only in the context of corridor projects and studies and grants. Process and system-wide improvement, that would be something that we'd want to think about for townwide projects specifically. And multimodal connectivity, again, those types of criteria would be applied to all project types. So for the safety and accessibility criteria, going to quick detail here, but specifically, safety is something that we are aligning with a documented safety priority list, and that list is included in the Vision Zero action plan. And I'll kind of pause there for a moment to really reiterate that a lot of the priorities and the criteria that we put into this document are based off of prior documents that you all have been working on that really, as I understand it, show how the town of Brookline wants to prioritize projects. For the Vision Zero Action Plan, for example, it lists the corridors that it considers to be the priorities for safety. So rather than coming up with a lot of criteria to assess average daily traffic and number of accidents per year, those types of metrics that one would typically do to do a safety analysis, I think we are in a good place where we can use the Vision Zero Action Plan to move us straight ahead to the corridors that we want to prioritize. Moving ahead then to accessibility for pedestrian projects. This is where we have principles that have been demonstrated by various plans like the Pedestrian Advisory Committee's Walkable Streets Priorities Plan and their Walk Signal Priorities Plan. We don't have a priority list of corridors, but that's something that we're very interested in meeting with the PEDAC with to get a sense of whether they could specify certain corridors that could be used for this prioritization effort. But we can also use the principles that are in those plans to rank projects as well. Then moving on to bicycle, this is where we do have bicycle priority lists in several plans, the Green Routes Master Plan, the Safe Routes to School Task Force Project Priority Plan, and the Brookline Bicycle Advisory Committee Project Prioritization List. We can combine all those and come up with kind of a consolidated list of corridors that we can assign the priority in the prioritization tool because of those corridors. All right, moving on. Accessibility. Continuing here, we have another bicycle criteria that we wanted to put in that talks specifically about the network connectivity for the bicycle network. And the way that we've suggested scoring this here is how well it connects to existing or proposed protected and unprotected bike networks. Then finally, under accessibility traffic, we have the list that's in the Complete Streets policy, and we have the principles that are documented in Brookline's traffic calming policy. So both of those we would use to assess traffic metrics. Equity criteria. This is where we're still trying to work on exactly how we can determine this and figure out the best way to do this, but this is where we can compare projects based on how well they serve environmental justice areas. The process or system improvement criteria. This is where we can assess whether the project aligns with a town priority for process or system improvement. The parking modernization project, for example, will be a perfect example in my mind of this type of project. Finally, multimodal connectivity. For corridor projects and studies and grants, we have two criteria in the draft tool right now. One that assesses whether the project provides multimodal access to high density areas, and another that assesses whether the project provides multimodal activity or access to parks, schools, and or senior public housing. And then for town-wide projects, we kind of tweak those slightly for the multimodal connectivity, and we'd assess whether the project encourages non-SOV travel and whether it provides multimodal access to students, seniors, and persons with disabilities. Moving on in the tool, criteria weights. So the way that I've set up this tool is each criterion is assigned a percentage weight. So out of all the criteria, all the weights sum to 100%. But if we want to prioritize safety the most, you could give that 90%, for example, and give 10% to all the other ones, or you can distribute it however we think is best. And then moving on to the scores. All of the scores are done for each criterion on a 0 to 1 scale. This makes sure that we have a consistent scale across all the projects and everything. Nothing is weighted more heavily than another simply because of its scoring. And then when we combine all those scores and we combine them with the weights, that represents, we do a multiplication of the criteria score and the weights to get each project's respective weighted rating, weighted ranking. And we can compare those against each project to determine a relative ranking. And determine which projects score the best, and so forth. So just a very final summary here. The prioritization tool, it permits weights and or scores to be changed. Anybody that has access to this can certainly change it. We can do scenarios if we change the weights in a certain way, if we change the scores in a certain way. But the way it kind of flows through is weights apply to scores, which apply to projects, which lead to the weighted score, which lead to the relative ranking. And so I've gone through a lot of that very quickly, but I think at that point, I know we don't have too much more time here, but as the commissioner mentioned, this is a primer. This is the first entry into this discussion, but I'm happy to answer any questions and hear any people's thoughts at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Commissioner. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't understand how this works. I really don't. I have many, many questions. I won't ask them all, but for an example, I don't understand the difference between safety and accessibility. It doesn't make any sense to me because accessibility is often a function of safety. So if with respect to bicycle travel, if certain routes are deemed inaccessible, it's probably because they're considered to be unsafe. So I don't understand what the difference is, or does it matter? I don't understand what you mean by equity. I don't understand what you mean by environmental justice. I had thought initially that maybe you were thinking about South Brookline versus North Brookline, that there should be an equitable focus on different parts of the town. That strikes me as an aspect of equity, and yet you only list something called environmental justice, and I have no idea what you're talking about. My only other comment is that for the future, it would be helpful to me if you could provide examples, like just without saying, okay, we agree that the weight should be X on this particular project. But if you could just go through a hypothetical where you show how this might work with respect to, I don't know, 2 or 3 different projects, let's say, and how you might, how the scoring might work, I think I would better understand it. But as it is, I have to say, I just don't understand how it would work.
That's fair. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Brian, I'll let you, if you had something to say, I know you let Nancy jump right in. So if you had something, feel free to go ahead, Mike.
I guess I would just suggest that a lot of this comes out of work that I know Rob has done in the past and I've done in the past with statewide transportation agencies. And fair points, Nancy. When we say things like equity and we say things like accessibility, I think it's sort of become shorthand perhaps for folks like me, and I don't want to speak for Rob, but I know what it means in a transportation context. So valid points, very fair. I think we need to do a better job of drilling down on exactly what we mean. I think what we're trying to do is organize a way to match projects or weight or measure projects against each other. And it's as much as an art as it is a science, and trying to figure out what that means. There are economic justice areas in the town that's based on census designated places or census tracts. There are differences between safety and accessibility. There are safety projects. And making something accessible tends to make it safer, but making something accessible, again, and there'll be different ways for these things. So I understand your frustration. It is confusing. I like your idea of having examples. I think that'll make a lot more sense. So we'll, like I said, we're gonna keep muddling through this for a while at every meeting and until we either throw it out and start again, or we kind of makes a little more sense to folks. So sort of stick with it. The process is really helpful, and I think helps. Jonathan, are you good? Did you want to go?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Yeah.
But
So thanks, Brian. Let's, this is a good slide to be on in general anyway here. So I would hope that our first goal is to establish what gets weight from each category and how things are weighed across there before we attempt to try to score projects, and that we reach a, I don't want to say consensus because we're not going to ever reach a consensus, but an agreement on those weights so that we're not nitpicking on what the scores end up being, that we've agreed on how things weigh out, and when the scores become what they are, it's based on what we agreed to along the way, and we don't say, oh no, I didn't think it was going to end up like that all along. You know, setting those weights and understanding, and yeah, we'll need some examples along the way, I agree, of what those weights will mean to us along, you know, as an end result. But I don't want to jump ahead and try to figure out what the scores are to set the weights and tip the scales, so to speak, along the way to certain projects. So that's on this particular slide. Some things that I think we do need to consider outside of the categories that Rob went over. There are routes. If we go to the Rob, actually, can you flip to the corridor section, because this is more corridor based than anything. You know, there are corridors that may not jump out as being terribly important, but fall in the safe routes to school category, or an emergency route to Longwood, or is a bus route that may not come across within the accessibility or bicycle improvements or pedestrian improvements or any of the particular categories that have been set up for scoring. And I think there's some value in being able to check a box on those, even if they don't necessarily score. It's a data point that we may say, well, it's scored, two things scored similar, but one is a bus route and the other is not, or one is an emergency route and the other is not. And that may tip the, like I said, tip the scales on that as well. And let's see, everything else in here. Nope, that's all. I'm good now. Thank you.
I guess the only other thing I would add, Jonathan, and I've seen this done in a couple of different contexts. At a regional level, it's always a concern. How do you measure a road project in a small town? This is at the MPO level, the 99 community, versus something in the city of Boston or Brookline. And so the scoring rubric is meant to kind of present a little bit of a level playing field. And I know it's esoteric at this point, but I've seen it work in a couple of different contexts. I know it can work. Well, we got to get the kinks, and it's probably not going to work perfectly the first time, but I do think it can work. Sorry, Wendy, go ahead, please. Did we lose Wendy?
Sorry.
Oh,
Who's doing the weighting?
we are.
We, as the board, are going through each and every one of these projects together?
No, we're going to go through
No, the weighting is first.
Right.
And then you score the projects once the weights are set.
So we as a board
All right, who's scoring the projects?
Well, it's a formula, right? So once the weights are assigned and once we agree on kind of a rubric and an approach and a methodology, it all gets scored, and then we look at the scores.
So when Jonathan just made the comment about having more clarity about what, I can't remember the words you used, Jonathan, about the weight, what the weights mean, you're saying that there is a rubric coming through our discussions about scoring that states clearly how you score something as in each of these numbers or something, some description.
So we
Yeah,
have
I
to
mean,
have a discussion as a board about, you know, what do we put more weight on? Geographic diversity in Brookline or whatever, you know,
Mhm.
safety, whatever. And again, we have to have that discussion. Yeah. And then the idea is that we're not looking project specific. We're looking kind of at this overall methodology. And then once everything goes in the hopper, whatever comes out will come out based on the weights and the scoring and the things we've chosen.
But somebody's taking the rubric once it's created and applying it to all of the different projects.
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet.
And that's being done by town staff or by us also?
No, that'll be Rob and those folks will do that.
And then it comes back to us for approval, or that's the final word?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like I said, this is much an art as it is a science. So then it'll come back and then we have to look at it. And if every single, you know, the top 5 are like all on Harvard Street. Okay. We can't do that, right? We can't do just Harvard Street or St. Paul Street or Beacon Street. So then we have to have a discussion about it. But I think, we also have to then try to kind of fit the money piece in at some point as well. So this is not meant to kind of like make this all like AI and just have a machine do it. It's meant to help us understand what we should be focusing on next.
I'm just trying to understand the process of it. I mean, I get what it's for. I guess I don't, I'm just unclear about the process, like how we work out. You know, we have these meetings, we have a lot of stuff on our agenda. People get, you know, tired and whatever. And so I'm just unclear how so when do we we're really like getting into the details of like developing this rubric together?
Yeah, we're going to iterate on this every meeting for the next through the summer, basically.
Yeah.
And then
Brian, if
please go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, if I may. I mean, Wendy, it's the first discussion is you know, what's important to the board, and that's the weights. You know, it's no different than when you're redoing a kitchen. You're picking the things that are important to you, and you're applying priority to them along the way. So our first task will be to look at the various categories that Rob's developed and determine not necessarily the value of them, because they're all valuable, but which ones should have more weight than others in order to score the corridors and intersections and studies and programs. The scores themselves, when they do come back to us, they may seem a little choppy. And, you know, we'll have an opportunity to say, okay, you know, everything's coming out with 1s and 0.5s. What does that do for us? You know, we'll have an opportunity to say, okay, we want to diversify these scores a little bit more and break them down to quarter points or tenths of a point, and understand a little bit more of how they separate, how the projects separate from each other, doing those things. But I wouldn't try to understand like all the way the end game right away, because the important part is right now is understanding what's important to us for Rob and staff.
Okay.
And Brian, if you want to jump to the commissioner first, I don't know.
I would be delighted to hear from the commissioner.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Chair. I think that was helpful in terms of the weights. So Robert has created a spreadsheet that where all of these different has these categories, and what the weight is can be adjusted based upon input from the transportation board. And so we can run some different scenarios. We think it's important to just to understand, are there other inputs that you want as part of this, and to also think of this as just a tool to sort of put some of these projects in context, because there are so many. And that's a way to think about it, but we'll also have to think about funding, about staff resources, about the scope of the project, and how long will that take? What else is coming up in terms of our roadway maintenance project, and does that shift when and how we want to do something? So it's not an absolute, it's a tool as part of the decision making. I think the hardest part of this process is going to be now, where we're trying to put together all of these projects and kind of think about how to prioritize them and develop a 5-year CIP. Once we are moving forward, we have our CIP, we're going to be looking at out years and then how to build that, but we're not going to be building it kind of from scratch, which is what we're doing right now.
But I guess
it is going to get easier.
Yeah. Can I, is it okay if I follow up, Brian?
Of course.
I mean, I guess what's a little confusing to me is that, so we're talking about the criteria and whether, and so is everything included? Do we want to add things, et cetera, et cetera? But then there's also, like, in these categories, so there's the categories, but then there's also how the criteria for scoring those categories. And is that something that we also that we're also doing together, or is that, I guess I'm just confused about the two different things. So we have both the categories and then we have the scoring of the categories, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it may be advantageous to have sort of a small working group, Chairman Kane, that actually work with Rob Guptill and are looking at all the different inputs. And that may help when we bring this back to the full transportation board again. So they can really dive into some of the details.
Within the limits of open meeting law, individual briefings on this might also be really good for folks that
even if maybe Wendy might want to participate in that. And I think, Jonathan has some experience in it as well. Wendy, I don't know if you're willing to do that and kind of to see if that.
And Wendy, just as another, as an example, I think like there's a cold hard version where you take all of our planning studies and all of our policies that include these corridors and intersections, and these categories are listed within those. We have green routes, we have a safe routes to school plan, we have all these things, and those categories fall in, and they're either in there or they're not. And there's yeses and nos associated with them, and they're weighted, and each one ends up being a score as a result. So that's an example of a way that can all fall out. That doesn't put a lot of opinion into it because it's already been approved by the board along the way.
Richard, go ahead, please.
So does this process now replace what was presented in January?
No.
With the tiers?
It's all related.
All related. Those are guidelines also that relate to this, but that's about your community engagement process. Right. So it all relates to how you develop and prioritize capital projects, and then how you engage with the community on design development through those projects.
On the, I'm not sure if we can put the slide up on traffic calming requests.
And Aaron, while that's happening, I would imagine that would directly relate to cost, which isn't really reflected in this presentation. But cost is a function of what projects get put forward from the fact that it's a capital investment plan. And the more engagement probably means it's a larger project.
Richard, which slide about traffic calming requests?
Yeah, you had your list of road
Oh,
projects,
oh,
and then
yep.
there's a list of traffic calming, I believe.
Townwide projects.
Would these are considered traffic calming requests or no? It doesn't seem like, right?
No, not
Those are like
necessarily. That's a
categories.
separate list.
There's 31 outstanding traffic calming requests
Right.
by neighborhood.
So, yeah, we were talking about this a little bit, Brian. So in the interim, with traffic calming requests, some of them, if correct, are dated quite a few years. And what I'd like to see happen is, we don't even know if those traffic calming requests, if those people who made them are still living here, for example. I think some of them are like 20 years old. So we definitely would like to build a criteria on traffic calming requests of, what the board agrees on, but, suggesting like, 10 residents are looking to, have a traffic calming request from a particular street, for example. And that we make sure that we involve the neighborhood when we are taking on traffic calming requests. And, where one individual out of a whole neighborhood doesn't drive the whole subject. Whether that's a criteria that we can agree to, but I think we want to possibly clean up what we have for traffic calming requests and make sure that they are necessary to do. Speed humps, I'm sure we get recommended all around town and everything. But they may not be needed everywhere. And if they're 20 years old, it just brings that into question. And then on the roadway project on the previous slide, I know you have like Harvard Street bicycle project for one, or Hammond Street, right? So Hammond Street's already, right, we would probably take those off this list.
Yeah, this
Or
list
were they
here
or you
combined.
intended to have those there?
Yeah, we have both existing projects, some existing projects, as well as future, both committed projects and uncommitted projects on this list.
All right, so it doesn't involve the current pavement preservation project that's going forward.
Actually, if you go to the next slide under townwide projects, you'll see the pavement, the PMPP is listed there under townwide projects.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm just looking at, we're looking at a list of what we got to work on in the sense, you know what I mean? So if Hammond Street is done, contract signed, Harvard Street, the contract signed, that's going forward. We shouldn't burn energy on that. As far as when we're basically trying to organize this list of projects. Correct?
The one that would likely become into the spreadsheet is like a greater bicycle project for Hammond Street. That would probably be the one that would be a future project, as well as a greater understanding of what Harvard Street could look like.
Okay, but Hammond Street, that project, we're paving in June, I think, right? And we have that roadway design already, right? And the signal is going in at Woodland, for example. So, and then quick question on St. Paul, is that planned for any pavement preservation? Does anybody know on engineering?
I'd have to look. It might be on the out year, but I'd have to pull it up.
Okay, no worries. Don't have to look for now.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. David Trevette, Pedestrian Advisory Committee, speaking for myself, and a number of comments. First of all, as a former project manager and project planner, I love this stuff. So I was very happy to see this tool that Rob has put together. And it sounds like a very sensible process. Back in the day when I was doing project management and system implementations, there was a book that I found called Decision Traps, was incredibly useful. It says you have to find a way to get to a decision and get to priorities. But then once you've done that, you have to take a step back and say, does this all make sense? Because sometimes you can be following the rules and following each step along. You get to a point and you realize, oops, maybe we didn't quite have the tool properly calibrated. And so that's the one step I would add to Rob's summary at the end, which is take a step back, look at it. Does it make sense? It doesn't mean, is it perfect? Because it won't be. It doesn't mean it's something we all agree to, because you probably didn't all. But is it something that we feel good about going forward with? So that's just a comment. I was very happy to see that Rob in his list included the 2019 walk signal report. That's been one of my great frustrations in terms of my long tenure with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I spent a year examining walk signals all over town. And we pointed out, one of the things that we pointed out was the number of places, particularly along Beacon Street, where pedestrians are told not to walk, where it is demonstrably safe to walk because traffic is stopped by a red light. And that was a question of equipment. And the current control cabinets could not handle the kind of overlapped phases that we needed in order to conquer that problem. Well, it's 7 years later. And I think that's been lost. I mean, that's something where we could be taking advantage of opportunities to improve things for pedestrians. And so that's something that I would love more feedback on. That is think of that as a townwide project that really needs to be thought about. And that brings me to the criteria. We also want to ask what changes people's behavior. Because remember, a lot of what we're trying to do is change behavior. We want more sustainable. We want people as much as possible to get out of unnecessary car trips, walk more, do more micromobility, whatever. And another criteria is what makes an alternate mode of transportation appealing. And so greenery, safety is part of that, but there are other aspects too that feed into the criteria. As Nancy said, examples are going to help this board work. So taking a few projects and sort of walk through how that would feed through the tool, and not just for a subset of the board, I think for the whole board, just to take a few, wouldn't take long to go through. I think that would be immensely helpful. And finally, in terms of, we're now trying to set up a meeting with transportation staff have asked us to set up a meeting to talk about this prioritization from the pedestrian advisory point of view. And one thing that is, and we've said this in many meetings, pedestrians don't think as much about corridors and routes as bicycle advocates do. We think in terms of neighborhoods. We think in terms of where pedestrians gather. And that it's just a different way of thinking about it, and it doesn't mesh well with the paving roadway maintenance idea of thinking about a whole long street. That's not sort of the pedestrians walk around a neighborhood. They're not riding through town. So I don't know how well it's going to fit the rubrics that are of necessity what DPW has to deal with, but that's an issue that I want to highlight, and I want us to think about the best way to incorporate the things that are important to pedestrians, like the benches along Washington Street that we heard about in terms of mentioned in improvements to Washington Street earlier. So those are just several things. And another question, and I don't know if there's an answer to this. This model assumes that the weights are global, but the same weights apply everywhere, I think. And I could imagine where it's, hey, safe routes to school, you got a lot of small people, you want a different kind of thing in terms of visibility. Another kind of street, a commercial corridor, maybe that's slightly different. Maybe the weights aren't global, and I don't know that. So the discussion that this board has about weights is going to be incredibly instructive. And then to take whatever it comes out with and say, how would we apply that to this area or that area or another area? I think this is a very important process that the board is undertaking. I totally support it. And just yeah, do it thoughtfully and carefully, and as I know you will. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think this is one of those things where it's better in year 2 than it is in year 1. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Emily Jacobson, go ahead, please, ma'am.
Hi, can someone open the 5-year paving plan? Just while I'm saying this. So, I've spent a lot of time looking at different priority documents over the past several weeks. You know, we have different tiers of Vision Zero, and then there are different tiers of public engagement and different priorities of the Green Routes Plan and different walkable streets priorities. And I am running into a problem where I don't have enough synonyms for tiers and priorities so that I can adequately identify what I'm talking about with someone. And I really agree that you guys need some way to figure out what money is going to be spent on each year. And this is very elaborate, and don't take this the wrong way, but it seems like a really good idea of choosing what needs to get done when you don't have anything really pressing to get done. And if you can look at the 5-year paving plan, I don't know if that can go up on the screen sometime soon. Yeah, so this is where the town is going to spend $5.5 million of CIP funds every year. And when I look at this, I think it's, you know, fantastic to have priorities, but we already have a lot of priorities. And we know that you're going to pave Brookline Avenue, Chestnut Hill Avenue, High Street, and Cottage Street. And I would encourage you to just look at the 5-year paving plan. Look at the roads on there that jump out to you that, I mean, I don't even need a priority plan to pull open to know which ones are the roads that are called out already in Vision Zero, in complete streets, in walkable streets, in the Green Routes Plan. And to instead look at it like we're doing all these projects. How much public engagement budget do we have, and how much you know, money do we have in order to spend on like how much transportation board time do we have to spend on these areas, and figure out what's the maximum possible that you can do within the priorities that you already have with the money that you're going to spend. Thank you.
Very good point, Emily. Thank you. Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Rob, anything you want to add at the end here?
No, only I guess that I'm totally happy to meet with anybody at any time to talk about this.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Okay.
Thanks for putting it together, Rob.
Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome to Brookline, Rob. We're going to move on to item 6, which is new business. New business. Anybody have any new business to discuss? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That objection, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a good week.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.